Thank you for that reminder. Okay, so I'm gonna have our panelists introduce themselves. If you could just share your name and just like a little bit about the role that you're currently in. So like, what is your job title? And maybe just a little like 2-sentence summary of what that actually looks like. And then we'll get into the details as we answer questions. Jordan, I'll have you go first.
Sure. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jordan, she, her. I was part of the 2201, 2203 repeaters club. So I work at Dish Network. My official role is a software engineer 1, but I do know code. So we'll get into that a little later.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh.
Hi, everyone. I'm Josh, he, him. I was 1909 backend grad. And I was a support engineer and I'm a support engineer lead at a company called Fusion.
Awesome. We'll go Kate and then Kenz and then Rachel.
Okay, my name is Kate. She, her. I am a 2008 backend. I was in that cohort. I actually didn't graduate. I got out early because I accepted a data engineering job. So while it is still as everybody would say, we still code. That definitely still happens. It's not your typical path outside of Turing. So I work with data all day, every day.
Hello, my name is Kenz, she, her pronouns. I was in the 2208 back-end cohort, and I see some of my cohort mates here. So I miss Turing, and I'm happy to be back here. But I am a software support engineer 1 at a company called Actable.
Awesome. Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel, she, her. I was in the 2001 front-end program, and I am currently a senior technical support engineer at Netlify. So providing support for our technical end users who are mostly software developers, software engineers, even some architect levels, and working with them to troubleshoot a wide variety of issues that come up. And yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everybody. I think for the way that I'll run this is I'm just gonna like call on one of you to answer a question. And if anybody else wants to answer it, if you just click that raise your hand, that way I'll know like who wants to answer it, but I'll get as many voices shared as possible. Josh, I'm gonna start with you. Do you mind just trying to give a quick rundown for folks, like what is support engineering? I remember having no idea even while I was applying for that role. So yeah, how would you define that role?
Sure. Yeah, I think it varies a lot between organizations. At a high level, though, you can usually expect it's just usually the interspace between the customers and the product. And it's that space where you're dealing with really technical developers and teams, and you're trying to make sure that they can implement your product, your service, your SaaS, whatever it is, in a really efficient way. And they're 9 times out of 10 paying for that support. So they're paying your salary essentially to do that client integration work. It kind of can pivot and diverge, and I can't speak to it because that's not what our company does. But there's also like professional services that could be part of that as well. And you could be on a support team that does some coding and some client integration work at the same time. Where I'm at, it's all about answering tickets, answering questions, answering Slack conversations around how do I get this part of your product, this part of authentication to work, and giving them targeted specific feedback so that they can launch or do what they're trying to do.
Awesome, cool. And Kate, could you define what like data science and working with data, what does that actually look like?
So actually the data world has a couple of roles that y'all will see. I'm a data platform engineer. So I work on building software for our data pipelines. So think about taking something from a Postgres database and putting it into something like Snowflake. That is a lot of what I work on today, but you will also hear about analytics engineers, which work on data modeling, really making sense of the data so that analysts can start analyzing that data. And then you'll have data science and ML, which are a whole other bucket of, I'm going to use the word that everybody wants to hear right now, AI, that really get into the statistical analysis and making recommendation engines and things like that. So there are a host of possible careers in the data space, but I kind of exist in the pipelines and moving data around area of the world.
Awesome, thank you. And Jordan, do you want to talk a little bit more about, you said that your title is software engineer, but that maybe is not the day-to-day reality. Do you want to talk more about that?
Sure. Everything that I learned in Turing is valuable and I use it except for the React right now. So our company and our team specifically are contract lifecycle managers. So we actually help to manage a platform that is used for our legal team here at Dish to upload and store and be able to author all of their contracts for the entire enterprise. So we work with a lot of integrations. We have a lot of security that we do, firewall access and all kinds of things. So also on a few projects about machine learning and teaching robots how to read contracts and upload those and pull out different attributes. So it's really interesting and it's a lot of data and we're dealing with APIs and we're dealing with, agile methodologies and everything that you've learned inside of Turing, except for the actual code. So that is dependent on me at home to stay fresh with all the current trends. But yeah, software engineer on a few different platforms on my team.
Awesome, sweet. And that brings me, I think a common question that gets brought up, and I saw it a lot in the event registrations, is around like, do you feel like you're using the things that you learned at Turing? Like, does that stuff feel valuable? So Rachel, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I would say it's very valuable. There's, especially for me on the day-to-day, like really being comfortable with like a Git workflow, being really comfortable with the command line, like super valuable there, but also just being comfortable consistently having to learn new things is, I think, one of the skill sets that's just by far the most valuable thing you'll get from Turing when it comes to like the hard skills. So I was front end, like the JavaScript and React, that in my current day-to-day has been very applicable. I was previously an employee of Gatsby, which was acquired by Netlify, and we would do support and have to have a pretty solid understanding of the Gatsby framework to help some of our customers. And so a lot of what I learned at Turing was very useful for me to be able to make sense of best practices and then being able to troubleshoot what different customers were doing and working to come up with solutions. So it does depend for sure. I've been at some companies where in the past, like maybe my JavaScript and React wasn't as valuable, but my HTML and CSS skills were coming from the front end. So there's a variety of skills and it does depend, but yeah, I'm super happy with what I learned at Turing and have been applying that in a variety of ways.
Awesome. Yeah, Kate.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of recent grads talk about, and I've talked to a few of them actually in person, talk about needing to learn new languages. So I was back end, so Ruby. I haven't written a bit of Ruby since I actually started my first job, but every company I've worked for has been actually a Rails backend. So I've been able to use my knowledge of Rails to understand how the data was being built, all that sort of stuff. So it became very, very helpful, even though I don't write it. And because everything is object oriented, at least with Ruby and backend stuff, I needed to learn Python. Going from Ruby to Python was super, super easy because of how similar the two are. So while I don't write Ruby every day, that actually came very much in handy. Probably the biggest thing was getting in-depth in SQL because, well, in Rails, he kind of glossed over the SQL part of it. But yeah, I think a lot of what I learned definitely came in handy. It was just applied in different ways.
Awesome. Cool. I'd love to talk about, like when you like decide to come to Turing, it's a huge life decision and you probably have some ideas in your life of what you want for yourself in that first job. And so, Kenz, I'd love to start with you. Like, do you have things that you were like, this is something I need from my first job? And do you feel like your current job, even though it's not a software developer, is it meeting those needs?
Yeah, so I was a complete career changer, but just like most people or a lot of people at Turing, I came from like retail and the service industry. And so what was like most important to me was being in an environment where I felt really supported and like not that my expectations were very realistic. And of course, like you can't vet, especially like these days, it's like kind of hard to vet because most people like just want a job, right? It's like, but I do think things are getting better. But I was lucky enough, like I had a few software engineer interviews that with companies that I would have loved to work at. One of them I felt was like I was a little underqualified for. It didn't end up working out, but essentially what the software engineer positions were looking for of the jobs I didn't get were essentially either people with more experience or like for one case, it was I didn't know React I didn't know React. So anyway, so I found myself in this support role. And it ended up being like the more that I started to like onboard with this company, the more it felt like the right thing for me, because like I just felt like it was a great first step for me, because I am in this place where they're not expecting me to like write a whole feature for something, but I am expected to know how to query, and I'm expected to know how to read code, and I'm expected to ask a lot of questions. And so in that, like I do feel super supported, and like my team shows up for me like every single day whenever I need it. And a lot of times they don't have time to time for me, and I have like you were talking about earlier with like what do I use from Turing, like my ability to search stuff and search errors. I'm using all of that, and I feel like it has been a really seamless transition from the backend program into what I'm doing now. So I would say, yeah, the most important thing to me was feeling supported, and in a support role, like I feel like it's the perfect entry-level situation with opportunities to grow.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, I felt the same way when I was in my support engineering position straight out of Turing. I cared very little about like what tech stack. Like I was like, I wasn't born to write JavaScript. Like I just want I want strong finances. I want to like end work at 4 o'clock and have emotional capacity. Like these are the types of things I wanted. And I can speak for myself and say that the like benefits, the salary were all very much in line with what my cohort mates were getting as developers. And so I think sometimes that's a fear for folks, is that it's going to be lower, there's going to be less room for growth. And I definitely had the opposite experience. So I'd love to go the way of growth. A lot of people had questions, like a lot is definitely the highest, most frequency question was around, where do you go from here with a role like this? And so I want to open this up for anyone who wants to talk about this. I'm going to start with Josh, because I know that you said that you're a support lead now. And so I'd love to hear about that. But yeah, I want to hear from a couple of folks with this one, is like, what does growth look like in this role?
Sure. Yeah, I'm kind of opinionated on this. I started as a support engineer 1, and to be honest, the salary was less than I wanted, but the promise was, we just want to, if you like it, you'll be at parity with your cohort mates in 6 months. And fair to statement, it was exactly that. So you might find that you start off as a support engineer 1, and it's like, but then like once you get past help desk basics, then you can quickly bump 30-40% up the rail on salary. And that's what happened with me. In terms of like, so I went from support engineer to support engineer lead, and I have this opportunity to be a manager if I want. And so I don't think I'm going to take that opportunity, but it's still yet there. I don't want to manage people full time. But being a lead, you can choose, like I'm managing both the technical integration questions that are coming in, and then I'm also managing the flow of workflow and workload coming out to the team. And so in a perfect world, I'm the hub, and I'm just pushing work out to the spokes. And then when I can take work, I'm pushing that work to myself as well. And so we're at a small startup. Fusion Off is 20 people going on 50. I mean, it's a fast growing startup. So there's a lot of demand around make sure every customer is absolutely pleased with the service and what you're delivering in support roles. So that's kind of informed the support journey that I've taken. But I also, being in this role, I see growth as almost unlimited. I mean, there's people that say, well, I want to be a dev. And it's like, well, you could be in this role and there's people that do support their whole career. And those people are actually very rare. And I'm not saying that anyone listening to this should do that. I'm just saying it's a valid career path. And it's something that if a company's looking for that, in fact, we are looking for like a 8-year, 10-year veteran that's been doing that. Because most folks want to get in, leave after a year and become a dev at the company or go somewhere else. And that's fine. But if you can stay your whole career, that's a unique skill set to be able to like listen and then articulate well in a written and verbal form. And the other thing is, you're touching so many things that I'm touching doc, I'm writing features, I'm writing bug fixes, I'm looking at code to see how we could possibly get into a code path. I mean, just today I was looking at a customer question about when does this event fire? And I'm looking at our code to find where do we execute this code. And so you're really not boxed in. I will say each support role is different. Some support roles you truly are, there's heavier gutter guards, so to speak. But you want to find that role where they can let you lift out. And then you got to be realistic and be honest with them. That would be my one piece of advice. Be honest if you don't want to stay there for the long term, because if they hire you thinking you're going to be there for 3 years and you leave, that's just bad feelings. And that's a bridge you don't want to even burn at all. So I guess those would be my initial thoughts. I'll turn it over to anyone else that has thoughts.
Yeah, Kenz.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that you said, Josh, and it's nice hearing that from someone that's been doing this for a long time. I've only been in my role for about 3 months. But what's really cool is like the girl that gave me my referral, she also graduated from a boot camp and was in the role I'm in for 10 months before she was promoted to the dev team, which they said was the fastest promotion they've ever done. But at the company I work at, they give me all the tools I need to explore our code endlessly. So I have like I just now have set up like a local instance of our entire code base, and like I can completely mess around with whatever I want. And like if I see a bug or something, like I have the opportunity to like work through code in areas that like maybe I don't understand about our program, because there is so much to learn. And it's really helping me as someone that was trained as an engineer to like learn, the program and just prove myself essentially. Like I had a meeting with one of the tenured team members, and he was like, if you want to be a developer, like that is it, that ball is in your court. Like it's just, you want to find a place that is supportive of that, of course. And like Josh was saying, like if I wanted to be a manager, I'm sure that would be an option as well. But on my team specifically, there's like 3 levels of support engineers, and the support engineer 3s are like doing really advanced querying and mapping and like crazy stuff that I have team members that are like 8 years tenured in our company. So it's completely accurate that like you can make a career out of support, and I believe that the compensation is great for that. And also like I know that my trajectory is being a developer, and it's exciting to know that I'm supported in that.
Yeah, Kate.
So yeah, I think one of the things to point out, I completely agree with what the 2 panelists before me have said, is there's a lot going on that I've seen across the last 2 companies that I've worked for, and what I saw in my previous career, which was marketing, is a lot of companies are moving toward lots of their dev roles going nearshore or offshore. And I see that happening a whole lot. Well, one of the nice things about what we're going to call alternative roles, data, support, infra, DevOps, all of that kind of stuff, a lot of those roles, depending on the company, have to stay in the location of the company. Data in particular, I work for a financial company. You can't have people outside of the United States messing with our data. So you literally cannot take my role and put it somewhere else. And that is a lot of job security right now, is knowing that what you're in cannot be outsourced somewhere else. That is huge. And also, at least for me, as I got into data engineering, I realized what parts of it I liked and what parts of it I didn't. Being close to dashboards, little too close to my previous world. Really hate them. So I made that very clear when I was interviewing for my second role, and they put me in the platform side of things. And that allowed me to really dig into the infra and the coding and the making of software, but on the data side. And I've even had conversations already about, hey, what else can I try? Can I move over to some of our other platform teams? Once you can get in with a company, if you realize that this isn't your thing, this is just not kind of clicking all those buttons for you, cool. Do your job, do it well, learn, push, grow, and then make it known to your bosses what you really want to be doing. And I promise you, if you are valuable, if you're showing your value, they will want to make you happy, whatever that means. And I've seen that hands down, people just willing to follow all over themselves to put you in something that really makes you happy, because if you're happy, you'll stay. So I think the career is as much as you make it, honestly. And you find a good company, you could try lots of different things.
Awesome. Really good perspectives. Yeah, could not agree more. I think the number one question I get from folks when I tell them that I went into support engineering is they'll say like, oh, like, how did you become a dev? And I'm like, I never did. Like, I didn't. It wasn't something that I had been chasing my whole life. I, again, was really chasing a better job in every sense of that. And so there were people on my team who became developers. That was the path they wanted. There were a lot of people on the team that were super happy with where we were and wanted to stay there and grow in that space. So really cool that even on this panel, we have people who have different goals with where they want to end up. Yeah, Jordan.
I don't have a hand, sorry, to raise.
You're good.
I wanted
physical hand counts.
Yeah, I wanted to say Turing really teaches you how to learn and how to be curious about new technologies. So I think it's important to remember, I see a question from Kareem about kind of changing your resume. Even now I've added this job onto my resume after Turing, and like, I'm not lying and saying that I'm doing React like to try to get my next React job, but I am saying that, you know, I know how to learn. I can learn new technology quickly. I offer every day to learn something new. We have an Oracle integration coming up, and I'm like, I don't know anything about Oracle, and I enrolled for a free course on it, and I'm getting a certification in 2 weeks. So just being hungry for that knowledge all the time, especially in this first year, first job out of Turing. I'm really treating it as like first year in college, like out of a 4-year for me, like, where do I want to go? This is my freshman year out in the wild. So really trying to think about the skills that I have rather than the actual languages that I know or the skill set that I know. So those soft skills can go a long way to get you into a software engineering position or adjacent position as well. Just saying yes to things and just kind of seeing, as everyone has mentioned so far, like, what do you like? What do you not like? And if you're like, this role isn't for me, try to pinpoint why. Or if you love something about your job, try to figure out exactly what that is. Like Kate's like, I love the data. Like, focus on what it is and use that to get to your next step. Like, I probably won't be at Dish forever, full disclaimer. And contract lifecycle management is not something I ever saw myself getting into. But I'm trying to make the most of it and make really great connections here. And I have a mentor who's an engineer. I have a mentee who's a career switcher and a young woman in tech. And she's just like, I don't know what I'm doing. And so she picked me, and that was great. Trying to say hi to my VP whenever I see him in the hall and take advantage of being in person, and just trying to make the most of every situation possible. And I'll just make one more point. We, as I mentioned, we don't do much code at all on our team, but we saw a need for some automation in some of the tasks that we were doing. And so we've actually started dabbling around in some Python to be able to automate and script some scripts for ourselves to make our jobs a little bit easier. So we kind of brought code into our project where there was none before, because we have a boss that's really encouraging about innovation and kind of taking opportunities when you see them. So we brought the code to us. So anything's possible if you are just open to it.
That's awesome. Cool. I saw, Rachel, you just answered this in the chat, but could you talk out loud about like, what was the application process like for you to get into a role like this? Did you have to make any significant changes to your resume? Yeah, just speak about that experience.
Yeah, so for me, prior to Turing, I had like over 10 years of customer facing experience in a variety of different capacities. So, and I mean, as you've all experienced, Turing is very much advocating for you to have on your resume all of the skill sets that you bring to you prior to going to Turing. And I think in this case, like this was super beneficial and like really actually like is what has helped make me shine and is what helped make me an attractive potential applicant. And why people reach out to me is because I have technical expertise, but I also have that really strong customer background. So if you have that in whatever capacity you've done, and like you're looking at a customer facing type engineering role, like a support engineering role, definitely highlight that, because it's nice to have that combination. Think about how the two can be combined. You know, you definitely always want to make sure the bullet points in your resume are aligned somewhat to the job descriptions you're applying to, as I'm sure has been reiterated. But yeah, no, that's been actually super helpful for me. And I've had conversations even with companies who are going to be hiring their first support engineer at the company, and they want advice on the job descriptions they're writing, because most of the time it's a smaller company and they have an engineer right now doing that job part-time, and the engineer's like, I don't want to be working with customers. And so they, you know, are looking for somebody who, again, can be really strong technically, who can do a lot on their own, who can be super curious, ask really good questions and like dig in deep, but then also knows how to interact well with customers and also enjoys it too. You definitely want to enjoy it, even though sometimes it's, anybody that's works anything customer facing understands sometimes it's not fun, but you still want at the end of the day be somebody who likes that interaction. So I would, yeah, I mean, you know, edit your resume as much as you would for like any job description to make sense for what you're applying to. But yeah, I think just consistently be curious about how your background and different things you've done prior to Turing can help you in this next step that you're taking, and how you're going to be able to bring those skill sets and highlight that. Because yeah, it's, people really do want to see a variety of things on your resume and not just a whole bunch of like the same React things. Like they want to see who you are as a holistic individual and what you can bring. So
awesome. Yeah, that was my experience as well. Like Heather, who now works at Turing as an instructor with me, she and I were in the same cohort. She had a really extensive background and experience in hospitality. And so she was like the prime candidate for a role like in support. And so the recruiter originally was aiming for Heather, and Heather, luckily for me, had already accepted a job and pointed the recruiter in my direction. And to align with what you're saying, Rachel, I did feel like a big part of my interview process was really trying to sell the side of me that like they understood that I was technical, and a lot of my interview experience was talking about the other parts of my experience, and really trying to align the fact that I was a teacher is like actually sort of aligned with the work that I was doing as a support engineer. And that is ultimately, I think, what got me that job, and not my technical expertise, because expertise at the time, I don't know how much of an expert anybody would have called me. Cool. Okay. Did anybody have during their interview for these roles have a technical component? And if so, could you speak to what the technical interview looked like? Yeah, Kenz, you go first.
Yeah, so my technical interview was, as I mentioned before, I'm doing a lot of SQL querying. So my technical interview was all SQL. And because I had Postman on my resume, they did ask me a few questions about Postman, but it was nothing like the scary stuff that you see online about, like, you know, these crazy challenging tech questions. And I did feel prepared. I definitely like ran out of time, and I knew it was a SQL interview, so I studied up on it pretty hard beforehand, but they weren't necessarily looking for me to get the answers correct, as they were for me to like know syntax and, like, you know, how different tables work and join tables and such. And like, they didn't care if I was like able to successfully do the query, as long as I knew like what it all meant, essentially.
Cool. Yeah, Kate.
So yes, I've gone through two very different technical sets. My first gig was a take home, and it was manipulating data, so processing a CSV. Again, most of us have done this. If you went in back end, you've probably done this in Ruby at some point. They were agnostic to the language used, so I could do it in Ruby, and they were perfectly fine with that. And then just kind of had to walk through how I solved the problem. That was very, very nice. Now my second job was much different. That one had more of the, hey, let's code in front of people. I had learned Python at that point. I had been using it for a year, and very in-depth SQL, so very much programming in front of other people, and a systems design interview, which scared the crap out of me, honestly. I hadn't done one. I didn't do one for my previous one, and I was just floored. I will not shy away from the fact that this is terrifying, but it didn't matter. They walked me through everything. If I was confused about something, I asked questions. And it turns out that's what they were looking for. They were looking for somebody that was interested, could talk through the problem, could ask the questions. And that worked out really well. So it was never that I absolutely needed to know everything. It was how I was working. So definitely had to show off my chops in Python and SQL. Definitely had to go through a systems design interview. And even though I think I failed it terribly, they still hired me. So keep that in mind. It is about how you communicate, especially at the entry levels. They're looking for how you learn. They're looking for how you work. Definitely keep that in mind.
Yeah, Jordan.
For Dish, it wasn't a standard code challenge, I'd say, but it was a Watson-Glaser logic test. It was very similar to the test, if you recall, at the beginning of Turing, they give you like a little logic quiz to see if you can do some simple things, which I was freaking out about. I remember I was terrified. But you know, if Sue has to join this class, but Marcy can't join this class, but Dan also wants to be a part of this class, who can join the class? Those kind of questions. Lots of conditionals and if-thens. So it wasn't anything too crazy after Turing. And then we did have another closer to code challenge. That was sort of in the final rounds, but I'd say nothing compared to a few that I had and totally bombed during the interview process.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rachel.
I'll add to it that I've had a variety of experiences. Some are, and I think the most common that I've seen is getting like some, and this is actually what I really like, is having like example like questions of like what you might be encountering in troubleshooting. And I've enjoyed when I've gotten those at companies, when it's been a variety of like, one, just simply testing, like, here's somebody that's really angry, and like, how can you communicate with angry customer, like very soft skilled, but then some would be more technical of like, here's a snippet of code. I don't know why it's not working, like help. And then troubleshooting that. And like, again, but doing so in a way and testing, like, how are you explaining that? So not only like, can you solve the problem, but how are you explaining it to a customer and teaching them? And if possible, pointing to resources. Additionally, they're also in a lot of those testing to see like how, again, is your like, how can you Google like and find the answers and find things, because a lot of these companies will have really good documentation that they want to see you're able to find and then apply and share with customers to kind of teach them to fish. I have also had a company that did do like a TypeScript, like full on coding interview. And that same company also did a systems design interview with me. And I felt extremely stressed out for both because it had been at that point like 2 years since I was out of Turing and I wasn't using TypeScript super commonly. And I thought they went okay. I was like, it was not my strongest, but the main thing I kept remembering through it and remembering kind of from Turing was communicating your thought process. Like, don't just be quietly stuck, and asking questions and making it collaborative. And I ended up getting an offer from that company. And a lot of what they said, they're like, your skill set wasn't like, you didn't like crush these technical things, but they're like, what we saw and the way we all were able to like interact and like solve the problems together is like what we were looking for. Because in that case, that company was mostly based in Australia. So I was going to be by myself a lot of my day. They wanted to make sure that like I was able to like work through things if I felt really stuck, ask through questions. So yeah, I think just being prepared to, again, use a lot of the things Turing's taught you of like asking really good questions, communicating during interview processes, and being, resourceful and being able to look for answers on your own. I think are really, really helpful to think about for interviews.
Awesome. Yeah. And that is like great advice for literally any role that anybody is applying to. Yeah. Awesome. One of the things that made me the most nervous going into support, so it's like a support specific question. I was feeling, all the feelings that lots of folks feel when you graduate from Turing, which is like, oh gosh, am I really qualified to do this? Like, some of my self-doubt was coming in. And I was thinking about when you're on an engineering team, if I make a mistake, the people that are going to see it are my coworkers. And in a support role, if I make a mistake, the people that are going to see it are the customers. And that part specifically made me have the most nerves about taking a role like this. So I'd love to hear, like, has anybody experienced that, or what is like the culture like around when you get that pesky customer that just cannot be pleased? Like, how does your team view that? And does it come into play when it comes down to like your work performance? I'd just love to like kind of squash some of the fears that folks might have about working with customers. And I'll let anybody answer this that has thoughts on that. Yeah, Kenz.
Yeah, so what I'm experiencing now is like that the structure of our organization is really supportive to where like my role as a support engineer is definitive. Like, there are certain things that I help our customers with, and then there are certain things that our client services help our customers with. And if it is outside of my realm, like, I'm not training our clients on using our product. I am helping our client troubleshoot our products, and I'm helping them get the data that they're looking for. And so if I ever feel like something is outside of my wheelhouse, like I'm not trained on training people how to use our product, so I shouldn't have to do that. So the second that my ticket turns into that type of thing, then I have the ability to pass it off to another team. So, I mean, I can't speak on what other organizations do, but my role really feels specific to, like, I am a technical, like, support, I'm engineering problems, I'm solving problems for customers. And then once it goes beyond that, like, it's not my problem. It's not my problem. It's no longer my ticket. So I feel very supported in that.
Awesome. Josh.
Yeah, I would just say it really depends. Like, on the opposite side of that, I'm on a startup and I was the 6th person hired at this company. And so you really owning a ticket is about like accuracy at that stage of a company's development. And so there is no other team to hand it off to. And so a lot of my initial responses were me grinding in my gears for 3 hours trying to make sure I had the right answer for the customer, and then still checking it with the seniors dev team, and then learning how to craft responses. And so I do think some of your answers are going to be customer facing, but it's also okay to be, I'm not going to say a little bit wrong, but it's okay to run the thread a little bit to make sure that you have the biggest thing I would struggle on when I first started was just getting context. And that doesn't require any oversight from an engineer. That doesn't require any senior coming in or any other ticket to be handed off anywhere else, if that's your organization structure. That's just like, okay, what are you doing, customer? And like, give me procedural steps. Let me see error logs. Let me see stack traces. Let me see your org chart and how you've built this in AWS, so I can give you pointers and then go target it to the team that can give me more help. And so that all is just coordination and human skills. That's all soft skills. And those things, believe it or not, like there's been a few devs that have tried this role that are just so technical they can't do those. So things are kind of rare to do. And when you learn how to do them well, that's huge job security. And oh, by the way, you're touching 25 different things. So you're gaining skill sets in like 25 different areas that a dev one won't get. And that's fine. You have to choose your life and your path, but like, it's also really cool to watch a prod instance go down and have a customer open a ticket about it, learn that. And the next day learn how to build a feature because the customer wants it built. And so like, these are the exposure points you're getting and responding to customers with.
That's awesome. Jordan.
Sure. When I first started, my manager's like, you are going to become the SME of this platform in 2 months. So learn everything you possibly can, and then you're going to be training users on how to use it. So that was a lot at first. And so I went through the platform kind of thinking like, well, what would I do? And what would I do? I'm not a lawyer and I don't write contracts for vendors or anything. So I had my own perspective on things. And when it finally came time to train users, my eyes were opened on all the different questions that could be asked about this platform. And I just want to say it's okay to say, I'm not actually sure. Let me get back to you on that and I'll do some research. And do your research and do get back to them. And that has really helped me to learn the platform more so than I would have on my own or could have on my own, because I have these different perspectives now from these different team members using these two different platforms, and kind of seeing how they work and seeing their workflow has helped me become a better support for these two platforms as their system admin. So proud to say, like, user adoption is something that I'm really proud of that I'm doing right now, because I'm really helping people to use these softwares to their best ability and maximize like all the possible growth and benefits they can from these things that our company's paying for. So I feel good about it. The unknown.
Yeah, that's awesome. Big agree. Rachel.
Yeah, totally agree with what everybody has said so far. And I would also add something that I make a point to do during interviews is asking the manager if you're able to interview with any like potential future teammates, as well as maybe somebody like outside the team in a different team. It always depends on what your interview's like, but trying to like ask during interviews how, what happens if somebody makes a mistake, like, or what happens if they're, like if somebody causes some sort of issue or incident, or like what's kind of the process for that, to get a sense of if it is a blameless culture, or also to just see like how that manager potentially works with members on their team for working through feedback of if you said something wrong, how are you going to coach each other, or how are they going to coach you, but then how also is it going to be received if you come to them saying, I think I did something wrong, or maybe the customer called you out and said you were wrong, or I don't know the case. Just knowing like, what is that culture going to be like? Because like people are going to be wrong, or, give wrong information and not be always 100% correct. I mean, you don't want to strive for always being incorrect, but it's going to happen. And I think getting a sense of the team and company culture of like how that's handled and how that's approached is also super important to know, for my own personal psychological safety in a workspace or in a workplace and team. So I just wanted to add that as an addition.
Great. Totally agree. I remember one time I was working with a particularly upset customer who was upset about things that were just very outside of our control, and especially my control, and was not particularly kind. And my manager told me, because at the end they would get a survey where they'd say like, how helpful was this? Like 0 to 10. And she said, I hope he gives you a 0, because if he gives you anything other than a 0, it means you helped too much. Like you bent over backwards too much to help this man who was not very kind and really unreasonable. And I thought that was like such a weird and like helpful perspective as someone who was like a month into my job and feeling loads of self-doubt. So that was really powerful for me. Cool. One more question. I think, while you're at Turing, we talk a lot about what collaboration looks like when you're a developer and you're developing things together on a team of developers. So I'd love to hear, and I'll start with you, Kate, like what does collaboration look like in your current role?
So it has looked like a lot of different things. The collaboration across your teammates when you're trying to develop something, that still applies in my role. Like everything we learned with the big group projects, so like one person's building one thing, another person's building something very similar, and you're kind of touching the same code, that absolutely happens. But I think on a larger scale, collaboration in the data engineering world is more, you kind of touch everything and everybody, because you have to be able to converse with the what we call SWEs, software engineers, or product developers, the people that are making the models inside of the Rails monolith that are producing the tables that we are moving around. Because sometimes things are not clear and you have to be able to have those discussions. Same thing on the other side is you have analysts, you have executives, you are looking at data and you have to be able to ask questions about it. And so that type of collaboration is like, it touches almost every single part of the business. And the more you can have those conversations, explain exactly why you need this information so that you can apply it to what you're doing right now, that is absolutely key. And honestly, something that is lacking with a large number of people that I work with. They are traditional engineers and they work in their pipelines and just their pipelines. And it's like, okay, but we have to go figure out what this thing means. So who can we talk to? That is a key differentiator that I've been able to bank on from my previous career, is working collaboratively across lots of different functions in the business.
Great. All right. I want to leave space at the end. If there's anything like panelists that you wanted to share that you haven't been able to share, I just want to open it up. If there's anything left that you want to say. Otherwise, we'll close out. Yeah, Rachel. And then Jordan.
I think one thing, one piece of advice I would give, because I know it's hard, especially if you're looking for your first job out of training and it's taken a while. I know you're just like, I just want a job, please. I just need to pay my bills. So I get it. I think even if you're not sure of like where you want to be in a year, 5 years in your career, because you just did this huge career change, you're navigating a lot. There's a lot of different ideas, and there's a lot of different options, frankly, of paths you can take. And you're maybe considering one of the roles we've talked about. So, and I'll speak from my experience with support engineering. Maybe you're looking at a support engineering role. Even if you're not sure if you're like, I want to do that full time, or like maybe I do want to end up switching, doing full-time software development. If you're applying and interviewing for a support engineering role, be excited about that role. You know, I think you can be upfront and be really frank, and you should be transparent about like what your 1 year, 5 year career plan is of, you know, if you are like, I do want to move into a software engineering role, because you also want to make sure that's available for you in a path that's an option. So be upfront, definitely, and having those conversations during the interview process, but be excited about what your job is going to be if you were to get that support engineering role, because I've actually interviewed some folks that have come from boot camps into support engineering roles who have not wanted to really even do the job at all, and kind of talk about that. And that was kind of a turnoff, because it is like, I do understand that in, a year, 2 years, you want to be working and move into a software engineering role. I totally respect that. And that's an option at companies I've been at. But I also, you want to know that that person's going to be invested in the team that they're joining. So if you're not feeling that, if you're reading the description, going through the interview process, having the conversations, and you're not wanting to do that job for, 3, 6, 12 months, just rethink that maybe a little, and maybe try to go a little harder on software engineering roles. But just wanted to put that out there, that you want to be excited about the job you are going to potentially be getting to a certain degree, because you want that as somebody on your team. And I think likewise, you'd want to be working with somebody who's also excited. But again, on the flip side, definitely be clear about what your goals are, because you want to make sure that that's available to you and that you're going to be happy. So yeah, that's just my advice.
Yes, totally agree. We'll go Jordan and then Kenz.
Yeah, and if you don't know what those goals are, if you're just kind of I don't know what to do, I just graduated. I think Kayla, you said, I don't think I was born to write JavaScript. I just wanted a better life and more salary, which is 100% why I did Turing. I'm how can I write for the money, but make it where it's not about that I'm just here for the money, but I am. So yeah, there's a great quote by Stanislavski for all the theater people out there. There are no small parts, only small no small parts, only small actors. So do your job with a smile and with enthusiasm. And if you have any interest in being on another team, you will be noticed. But y'all can reach out anytime. I'm on Slack if you ever want to chat more. But yeah, good luck.
Awesome, Kenz.
Yeah, just to echo what Rachel and Jordan said, if you are hesitant as to whether or not you feel like a support role will be fulfilling, and like I said, I know I've only been doing this for 3 months, but every single day I love my job, even on the stressful days. My days go by so fast. I'm problem solving all the there's never a dull moment. I'm always learning, and I feel like the frustrations that I face in my role are very similar to ones that I would face as a developer. So just definitely keep an open mind and know that if you've never had a role in tech before, any technical position is going to be challenging, and it's going to be a great opportunity for you.
Yes, 100%. Just, yeah, you don't know what you're going to like or not like. You don't know yet until you do it. Josh.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of that. For me, support engineering has just been an invitation. Most companies are hiring that role because they need to fill it at the larger levels, because they need to have that integration layer with customers and the product. But the smaller companies, a lot of them, in my experience when I was interviewing, wanted to train up the next brigade of people in tech, and they want to give you those opportunities to learn and grow. And so I just see it as if you're at the right company, and there's a lot of good support engineering roles and good companies in Colorado, you can, and elsewhere, you can really be exposed to so many different facets. I mean, I'm on call, and I could see that as a bad thing, right? Now I got to wake up at 3 a.m. Or last time it happened, which was 9 months ago, I learned, okay, what do you do as a senior dev? Because of course I'm calling a senior dev if I troubleshoot for an hour and I still can't figure it out. But what do they do? And they've been doing this for 20 years. And you're not going to get that exposure trying to get a bug fix pushed as a dev one. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that path. I'm just trying to showcase that there's a lot of beautiful things that you get to exposure to in this other path. And so I would encourage you to see it as like not a bad thing. I initially thought of it as a bad thing. Like I don't want to be a tester. I don't want to be a support engineer. But then as I heard other folks talk about it, I was really enticed to try it. I also will plug the Hello World podcast. I do a little interview that will be out on the 8th about support engineering and my role. So if you all want to hear more about that and hear me drone on even further, you certainly can. So anyways.
Love it. Awesome. Thank you so much, panelists, for being here and for all the participants who came and submitted questions. Really, really appreciate it. I am recording this, so if you have if you have friends that are also seeking jobs right now that weren't able to make this call, definitely let them know that this is recorded. But yeah, thank you so much, everybody. I hope you have a great Monday, and I'll see y'all later.